It's April 14th, 1912. You are somewhere in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean on the largest, most expensive ship ever built. The night is completely calm, the water is flat, the stars are out. And in about 4 hours, you are going to be standing on the deck of a sinking ship, wondering if you are going to make it. So let's find out, would you have survived the Titanic? First question, your ticket. The Titanic had 3 classes of passengers, and where you sat determined almost everything about what happened to you that night. First-class passengers paid the equivalent of roughly $100,000 in today's money for the top deck suites. They got private promenades, a swimming pool, a squash court, and cabins closer to the lifeboats than any other section of the ship. Of the 329 first-class passengers on board, around 200 survived. That's about a 60% survival rate. Second class was more modest, but still comfortable. Professors, clergymen, tourists, people doing all right, but not wealthy. Their cabins sat in the middle of the ship. Of the 285 second-class passengers, around 120 survived, just over 40%. Third class, steerage, was a different world entirely. Hundreds of immigrants, families, people who had saved for years to afford a ticket to America. Their cabins were deep in the lower decks, furthest from the lifeboats, behind a maze of corridors and locked gates. Of the 710 third-class passengers, fewer than 180 survived, around 25%. So if you booked cheap, you already started the night at a serious disadvantage. At 11:40 p.m, the lookout spots the iceberg. The crew attempts to turn the ship. They almost make it. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side for about 10 seconds, buckling the hull plates across 5 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments. The Titanic could survive 4 flooded compartments, not 5. Most passengers feel almost nothing, a slight shudder, a distant grinding sound. People in the smoking room barely look up from their card games. Here is the first decision that determines whether you live or die. The crew begins waking passengers and asking them to put on life jackets and come up to the boat deck. A lot of passengers refuse. It is freezing on deck, around 28 degrees, and the ship feels perfectly solid beneath their feet. The lifeboats look small and uncomfortable. Many people, especially first-class passengers, go back to their cabins and wait. That is the wrong call. The first lifeboat is lowered at 12:45 a.m. It has a capacity of 65 people. It leaves with 28. The crew is not filling the boats, partly from poor coordination, partly because passengers are reluctant to board, partly because nobody has run a proper lifeboat drill. Boat after boat goes into the water half empty, while over 2,000 people are still on the ship. If you are awake, paying attention, and willing to get into a lifeboat that feels unnecessary, you dramatically improve your odds. 12:45 a.m. to 1:45 a.m. is when class really starts to matter. First-class passengers are already on the boat deck. They are cold, but they are there. They can see the lifeboats being loaded. They have direct access. Second-class passengers are being directed up through the interior of the ship. It takes longer, but most of them make it to the deck with enough time to find a boat. Third-class passengers are in serious trouble. Many of them don't speak English. Crew instructions are confusing or non-existent. Some corridor gates connecting steerage to the upper decks are still locked, either by policy or by crew members who haven't gotten the order to open them yet. By the time most third-class passengers reach the boat deck, the majority of the lifeboats are already gone. There is one factor that cuts across every class: gender. Women and children first was not just a suggestion that night, it was enforced. The survival rate for women across all classes was around 75%. For men, it was around 20%. If you're a man traveling alone in third class, your odds of surviving the Titanic are somewhere around 10%. By 1:45 a.m, the bow is visibly underwater. The angle of the deck is becoming impossible to ignore. The last few lifeboats are being loaded in a panic. At this point, your options have narrowed significantly. If you are in the water, you have somewhere between 15 and 45 minutes before hypothermia kills you. The water temperature that night was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, just below freezing. Most people in the water were dead within 30 minutes. There are approximately 1,500 people still on the ship when the last lifeboat leaves. At 2:17 a.m., the forward funnel collapses. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic breaks apart and sinks completely. The lifeboats are in the water nearby, but almost none of them row back. The people already in the boats are terrified of being swamped by desperate survivors. Only one lifeboat, Lifeboat 14, returns to pull survivors from the water. It rescues 13 people. The Carpathia arrives at 4:10 a.m. By then, the water has done its work. Of the 2,224 people on board the Titanic that night, 710 survived, just under a third. Whether you were one of them came down to a combination of your ticket class, your gender, how quickly you got on deck, and whether you were willing to get into a lifeboat before it felt truly necessary. The people who survived were not necessarily the strongest or the most prepared. A lot of them were just in the right place at the right time, paying enough attention to act before everyone else realized they had to. The Titanic has been sitting on the floor of the North Atlantic for over 100 years now, 2.5 miles down, in complete darkness, slowly dissolving. And the lesson it left behind is a simple one. When something feels slightly wrong, trust that feeling, because by the time it feels completely wrong, you may have already run out of time. Thank you for watching Animated History Files. Subscribe for more stories from history.